you know me better than I know myself, and you've known me longer than anyone else. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, and I can't even understand it. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. I can't even comprehend it, but I know you see. Oh, this I know you see. Oh, I could walk where men may never tread, or plunge the depths where I could make my bed. But I never went hide and seek. You're so good at finding me, only lost in the mystery of the depth of your love for me. Just as knowledge is too wonderful for me, and I can't even understand it. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. Oh, and I can't even comprehend it, but I know you see. Oh, this I know you see. And even where my world is shaking, Lord, your hand will hold me still. Even where my world is shaking, your hand will hold me still. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made.
Feliz sábado, pessoal, tudo bem? Happy Saturday! Eu gostaria de chamar aqui os meus amigos, a minha equipe maravilhosa. Boa noite, feliz sábado, Arthur, Igor, Emily, tudo bem com vocês?
Happy Sabbath, tudo bem.
E aí, tudo certo, pessoal?
Thank you very much. Vamos dar boas noites aqui para o nosso amigo Bruno Faneca, que está lá no YouTube. Happy Sabbath, Bruno. Bom recebê-lo aqui. Nós temos também pelo Facebook o Nicola. O Nicola, uma pessoa maravilhosa lá da igreja de Copa. Nicola, you are welcome. Seja bem-vindo. Muito
Nicola é
legal.
italiano, né?
Ele é brasileiro,
Esse
mas
nome aí?
Nicola e todo mundo lá é italiano. Ah, mas calma aí. Eu não podia esquecer a primeira pessoa que chegou aqui foi a dona Eva. A dona Eva, ela utiliza lá no YouTube a conta do filho dela. Então, a dona Eva se chama Kiko. A dona Eva é uma graça. Ela foi sorteada, ela ganhou uma caneca dessa aqui, ó. Revisa aí em português. Aí na parte de trás aqui tem Projeto Maná, que é o projeto da assinatura da lição. E a dona Eva ganhou, ela está feliz, disse que vai vir aqui participar da lição em inglês. Seja bem-vindo aqui, viu, dona Eva? Muito bom. Ó, o Nicola tá mandando um abraço aí. Valeu, Nicola, é isso aí. Pessoal, mas olha quem chegou aqui, direto do interior de São Paulo, a dona Mirelle. Olha aí.
É a polícia, hein? É a polícia.
O Arthur vai dizer
Piada
se
interna.
é polícia, é polícia. Né? Que bom, Mirelle, seja bem-vinda, muito bom estar aí com vocês, vai ser muito gostoso. Nós vamos compartilhar aqui com vocês algumas ideias que nós estudamos essa semana, tá bom? E olha, direto também da Faculdade de Teologia, nosso amigo Renan. Renan, Happy Saturday, you are welcome. Você é parceiro, beleza?
Renan que foi regional de jovens aí da gente, da nossa região.
Isso, o próprio. A Mirelle aqui, ela tá se defendendo aqui, pessoal. Calma aí, ela diz, como é que é? Meu São Berlondres. Meu Deus do céu.
É um apelido carinhoso para São Bernardo.
Então, São Bernardo é São Berlondres. Poxa vida. Então tá bom. Sejam bem-vindos então, pessoal. Ó, vamos fazer uma oração em português e depois eu vou dar uma pincelada aqui na lição e a gente vai começar a bater um papo em inglês com vocês. Beleza? Eu vou fazer aqui uma oração e aí em português e aí a gente vai bater um papo na lição em inglês daqui a pouquinho. Feche seus olhos, ore comigo. Querido Deus, obrigado por mais esse dia. Obrigado por mais um sábado. E agora, pedimos a sua bênção ao estudarmos esta lição em inglês. É o que pedimos e agradecemos em nome de Jesus. Amém. Muito bem, pessoal. Eu vou compartilhar aqui uma tela que eu gostaria de mostrar para vocês. Deixa eu achar aqui. Blá, 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 blá. Achei. Deixa eu ver aqui. Muito bem. Então tá aqui, como vocês podem ver. Deixa eu subir aqui. A lição dessa semana está aqui. Em inglês, ela tem essa visualização aqui, tá bom? Lesson 7, Rest, Relationships and Healing. Então, uma tradução bem simples. Descanso, relacionamentos e cura, tá bom? Vamos ler o verso para memorizar, o memory text. Vou colocar aqui em azul para todo mundo ver. Eu estou deixando aqui bem legal. Beleza? Ô Igor, você consegue ler para a gente aí o memory text?
Vamos lá. Let's go. But now, do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life.
Okay, thank you very much, Igor. This text was talk about Joseph. Joseph is now the prime minister in Egypt after he's released from prison, right? Muito bem, amigos. A lição dessa semana, José é libertado da prisão e agora, sendo primeiro-ministro ou governador do Egito, ele começa a sua saga. E aqui, no verso para memorizar, nós lemos: For God sent me before you to preserve life. Ou seja, José disse para os seus irmãos: foi Deus que me enviou antes de vocês ou diante de vocês para preservar a vida. Muito bem. Let's talk in English now. Well, our first lesson, Sunday's lesson, facing the past. So I'd like to ask Igor. Igor, are you ready to Sunday's lesson?
Yeah, sure. First of
All
all,
right.
it's important to underline something here. We are continuing studying the history of Joseph. Last week we talked about how he became a slave in Egypt, how he went to prison, and this situation, this hard situation for him that involved his family, dysfunctional family, and all this event developed in the situation that was before him was that he was at prison, and after that, the at prison he became like a boss of the prison. So he interpreted two dreams: one of the cupbearer of the pharaoh, and the other dream was the name of the guy was a kind of servant of Pharaoh, two servants. And so after the things, as I said before, developed in a way that Joseph became the second of the kingdom of Egypt. So he became a very important person, VVIP of Egypt. Just the Pharaoh was more important than him. So he was in that great position that he achieved at the most important kingdom of the earth by that time. So, and there was a famine in that region. So that's why Joseph was appointed by the Pharaoh as a governor of the land of the empire to store food, to distribute food, to help to manage that, so the people could not starve during that hard period. So in Cana, where Joseph and his family lived, also there was everybody was hungry. There was a famine. There was a lack of food, so they needed to go to Egypt. And Jacob, Joseph's father, sent his 10 brothers to Egypt. That is the situation that is the first image of the lesson of this week. So the Joseph brothers are there standing before him. If you remember, it's like that Joseph, it's like the dream that Joseph had when he was young, even before he was sent, he was sold to Ishmaelites. So right back
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
beginning. So that was the situation that was occurring there in Egypt. So, and basically we're gonna talk during this weekend's lesson about forgiveness. When we read this title, Rest, Relationships, and Healing, these terms, they all have to do with forgiveness. And that's the key point, the key words of this discussion that we are facing here is forgiveness. So we're gonna study the power of forgiveness, but we understand that it may be hard for many people to forgive, because people are very hard to relate with each other. Sometimes people can hurt you so badly that you maybe you're not able even to look at the face of this person that hurt you. So it's very hard. But Joseph brings to us this important lesson regarding forgiveness. So at the story, we're gonna see that he needed to face his past. That's the title of this of Sunday's lesson. He needed
And
to
this was
face.
a great
Yeah,
and this was a great challenge for Joseph, right?
yeah, because there were so many maybe unsolved situation inside
Yeah,
him that we could
yeah.
not manage well. And he gave us a great example how to deal with to deal with some people that maybe have hurt you or betrayed you, something like that. And when we read the Bible, we're gonna see exactly how he acted. Brings us to bring to us this description that is in the Genesis 42. I'm not gonna read all the text because it's a huge part. It goes to the verse 7 through 20, and I think that we must take some lessons from this situation. First of all, Joseph was in a position that he could do anything he wants with his brothers. He could send them to prison, as he did for a period of time, but not uh, for good, for eternity. Let me say that. But he chooses to forgive his brothers. It's interesting to see that he was in a position, as I said before, that he could abuse of his power. He take advantage in a way that could hurt his brothers in a way that the revenge will be so historical revenge. Let me put it in this way, because he had all the power to do whatever he wants. So he was the second most important person in Egypt, and his brothers were there before him asking for food. They were buying food, but uh, Joseph could do whatever he wanted, as I said before, and he chose not to harass, not to abuse both emotional and physical. Uh, he's not. He chooses not to hurt to pay the bad with the pay evil with evil. He chooses
Yeah,
to change the
yeah.
perspective of that relationship, and it was very hard because maybe sometimes the guys that are watching us today, maybe somebody may have a story with a relative, a parent, a brother, cousin that was not well solved, and even now you store some anger inside you, and you cultivate this feeling, this bad feeling, this evil inside you. And the lesson that Joseph brings to us is that we have to take this challenge of forgiveness. We have to act in a different way, in a different perspective that the word uh, may teaches us to act. Uh, I remember by reading this story. I remember a book of Alexander Dumas, The Count of Monte Cristo. I don't know if you are aware.
Oh, very nice.
And this is a story basically about revenge. So
Yeah.
what Bible proposed to us is to act in opposite way of the Count of Monte Cristo. You don't have to seek revenge. You have to experiment this forgiveness that has a repercussion in many aspects of your life, both maybe emotional, maybe the way that you live, you will deal with your relatives. It's very hard. I can understand if anyone say, so I cannot achieve this level of greatness, of holiness, or whatever. But I think that's what the lesson proposed to us in this example, that Joseph faced it, can bring us to us an important goal, so we can achieve this way of life. I think that the forgiveness is a way of life. It's just not an action, is a way of living, forgiving everybody, I said. But as we're gonna study, there are more repercussions. It is forgive and forget. How we can manage all these situations. I think that to start our discussion today, I think that's the important part that I would like to point, because Joseph was a really great example for us, and he managed his past very well. And he maybe, I think that was a little bit tricky, trying to measure how changed his brothers were, and how changed the how was in back home, how if his father was still alive, if his brother Benjamin was doing well. So I think Joseph was a very smart guy by choosing the forgiveness, in not applying this revenge that was so maybe easy for him to choose the revenge, but he chose forgiveness.
Igor, em português, foi muito legal essa tua ideia de trabalhar com um pouquinho a história de José e agora com os irmãos. A dona Eva, ela fez uma pergunta aqui e diz assim: o que José sentiu a respeito do perdão dado aos seus irmãos e o que isso nos ensina? Então a dona Eva está aqui tentando escrever o inglês aqui, tá razoável, tá muito bom, viu, dona Eva? Então vamos lá. Igor, are there some lessons, some examples, some models about the forgiveness given to the brothers of Joseph? Because there are another commentary here about from Hannah. Hannah said Joseph didn't care about being second in Egypt because God was first in his life. Wow, very nice. Igor, what do you think about lessons, or one lesson, one point that caught your attention about this forgiveness of Joseph to his brothers?
The lesson brings us an idea. It's like Joseph already decided before meeting his brothers, he already decided to forgive them. It's interesting to notice that, because, and we're gonna see after in some verses that he understood that even his brothers made that evil toward him. He understood the way that God acted in his life, the way that God transformed his life, the way God made a miracle in his life. So that, I think, that changes the perspective for him, because when he realized that the things were so wrong and so bad in Joseph's life. We saw last week, he became a slave, and after that he was accused of a crime that he not committed, of attacking the Potiphar's wife. He ran away, and she said that he was trying to harass her, to attack her, and he went to prison. Both the guy, the servant of the Pharaoh that was in prison, made a promise to him. I will remember of you. I will tell about you to Pharaoh. So
about his
Pharaoh,
future.
Yeah, Pharaoh will take you away from this prison, and you're gonna be free again. So I think that Joseph understood that. Maybe even when things went so badly in his life, he had this connection with God that changes all the perspective in his life. So I think the most important thing we talked about last week of the sense of holiness that he had toward people that were around him. So Joseph saw his brothers. It's hard to point like that, but he saw like they were holy, so they were sons of God too. So they not like, it's not that deserve my forgiveness, but I will apply here the grace of God, this love that comes from God. So as I said before, I think that's the central point that can change it, that changed his perspective, and then that can change our perspective today.
Igor, can I say that if the grace of God reached Joseph, probably Joseph wants to share this grace to his brothers too, right?
Yeah, it's like nowadays, if we understand completely, fully, how important, how strong, how transforming is the grace of God, be pushed by this feeling to go to the world and tell about it. So I think it's like that. Joseph received this blessing from God, and he was very smart guy to. I think that's in Monday's lesson to prepare that stage and to measure how his brothers were, and to apply this forgiveness, to show them the forgiveness that he already decided to apply before.
Wow, thank you very much. Em português, Eva, o Igor comentou que quando José viu os irmãos, ele não sentiu a vingança, ele sentiu a graça de Deus. E essa graça, eu até comentei, talvez tenha alcançado José e ele quis compartilhar essa graça, porque ele não estava preocupado com os irmãos, ele estava preocupado com Deus. José tinha Deus na vida dele. Então foi mais ou menos isso o que o Igor trabalhou. That's it. So, before Emily is occupied by Monday's lesson, I like to share a file of video. I'll try to share this video from one well-known singer in Seventh-day Adventist Church, Paula Chacon. Let her talk about.
Amigos, tudo bem? Eu sou a Paula Chacon e estou passando aqui para te fazer um lembrete super especial. No próximo dia 22, a gente vai ter o dia inteirinho separado para rechear a nossa cesta espiritual para o ano de 2022. Você vai se juntar com seus amigos, com os irmãos da igreja, para fazer a assinatura da lição da escola sabatina, algo tão especial que nos nutre diariamente, espiritualmente, nos leva a ter um contato especial com o nosso Deus e aprofunda o nosso conhecimento na Bíblia. E você não vai ficar de fora, né? Então espalha essa notícia, se prepara, porque dia 22 de agosto, de 8 da manhã às 8 da noite, a gente tem um encontro especial para fazer a nossa assinatura da lição e principalmente rechear, fazer um banquete espiritual para nossa família em 2022. Espero você, não vai faltar, hein?
Olha, ó, legal, hein? Puxa vida. Muito bem. Deixa eu tirar aqui. Muito bom. Thank you very much, Paula. So, on Sunday, 22 August, it's time to subscribe our lesson, right? Paula Chacon remembers all efforts from our Rio de Janeiro conference to you. Don't forget to subscribe our lesson. And Monday's lesson, Emily. Monday's lesson talks about... Hey, how are you, Emily?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Monday's lesson, as you see, is talk about setting the stage. In Portuguese, preparando o terreno. Emily, what do you think about setting the stage?
Well, I think it's a very good expression to define what Joseph had to do with his brothers, you know. Now we have studied on Monday's lesson how Joseph had to forgive his brothers. We all had to deal with forgiveness and anger at some point of our life, but we can realize that Joseph was abused and harmed by his brothers during his life. And we can think about all the psychological issues he might have developed because of it, because of the bad things that his brothers had inflicted on him. But
Very
even
nice, very
though,
nice.
yeah, he had to prepare the stage to deal with this situation and to forgive his brothers long before they even show up in Egypt, just like my friend Igor said before. And the lesson
Right.
says that if he hasn't forgive his brothers long before they even got there, the anger and the bitterness would have eaten away his soul and damaged his relationship with the Lord. So Joseph was the most blessed person by forgiving his brothers. Forgiveness is something about us. It has more to do with ourselves than with the others. And that's why I personally think that forgiveness is a blessing given by God for
Yeah,
us because it
yeah,
doesn't come from us.
yeah. Emily,
And it will.
Emily,
Oh,
o Renan, our friend, is graduated in psychology, and he wrote, "Forgiveness has the power to restore people regardless of circumstance. Forgiveness is another name for grace." Well, it's so related to your talk about, right? Please, Emily,
yes, I
continue.
couldn't have
Go
said
on.
better. Thank you, and I couldn't have said better. It brings peace and healing, right? I would like
Yes,
to
yes.
read Genesis 42, verses 21 to 23. Can somebody read that for me, please?
Wow, repeat. What passage?
Genesis 42, verse 21 to 23.
21.
Because I'm using my phone today, so I can open the Bible here.
I can share this. I can share this verse. Just a little minute. I read this passage, right?
Yeah, right. Thank you.
So, Arthur, can you read this?
Yes, I can. Uh, they said to one another, "Surely we are being punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we wouldn't listen. That's why this distress has come on us." Reuben replied, "Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must give an accounting for his blood." They did not realize that Joseph could understand them, since he was using an interpreter. He turned away from them and began to weep. But then he came back and spoke to them again. He had Simeon taken from them and bound before their eyes.
It's a very tough
All right.
situation that Joseph had to go through again. And his brothers were not aware that he could understand them. And it's like Joseph had a confession from his brothers and
Yes.
they didn't even knew about that. And it's interesting to think that his brothers really thought that they wouldn't have to watch Joseph being the favorite son, and they could find rest. But instead they had to face a guilty conscience all those years, besides the fear of God's retribution. So Joseph actually felt sorry for their suffering when he wept for them. He felt the pain for his brothers. I think it's amazing. It's a very visual glimpse of God's forgiveness and God's love inside Joseph. And Joseph, I realized that Joseph not only forgave his brothers, but he taught them how to forgive themselves. Joseph was changed by God and had an overcoming story with God. And then he offered his brothers in that day, while he was preparing the stage, he offered his brothers a glimpse of God's love and God's powerful forgiveness. And that's it.
Thank you. Yeah. This kind of in Monday's lesson prepared our mind to see that the difficult problems that Joseph faced to forgive his brothers and probably face his past too. So this very nice, Emily, for your reflection. Em português, pessoal, eu tô tendo um eco aqui no meu fone, eu tô percebendo. Eu acho que as pessoas também estão ouvindo isso porque nós estamos aqui ouvindo aqui. A Fernanda comentou aqui, ó, o áudio do Bruno tá dando eco. A Evelyn também comentou. Obrigado, Fernanda. Obrigado a doutora Evelyn também. Obrigado.
É para reforçar a ideia. Houve 2 dias para reforçar a ideia.
Agora melhorou?
Eu acho que é a da Emily que deu uma mutada ali no... Isso aí, quando ela abre lá, vai duplicar.
Então é isso. Será? Deve ser. Então, beleza. Então, deve ser isso, então. Ok. Don't worry. Emily, thank you very much. Let's go on to Tuesday lesson. I'd like to share my display, my keynote for you. Just a little moment here, right now. Well. Here. All right. Tuesday lesson, forgive and forget. Probably this is the most nerve-wracking part of the lesson. So in Portuguese is the translation below. Why? Because forgetting does not involve forgiveness. Well, this is a important lesson to me, because sometimes let me stop. Right. Because sometimes forgiveness is an obligation for some Christians or some religions people. And forgiveness is not only an obligation. Forgiveness is not only an act of love. Forgiveness is not only a resolution of my schedule, right? On the survivors from Holocaust, the Dr. Marilyn Armour talks about the kind of the idea of forgiveness is an intentional act from the victim. So forgive is a choice. So this is an important lesson. What is the lesson? Love another people is an obligation, because Matthew chapter 5, Jesus talked about love our neighbor and our enemies too. But love is different to like the behavior, our practices. It's not the same thing. Love is different from like. So forgive is linked to love, not linked to like, because God doesn't like some practices. For instance, for example, on Deuteronomy 18 talks about the practice. Let me see on my Bible here in English. The proper word on verse 9 onward. Verse 10, let no one be found among you who sacrifices his son or daughter in the fire. This is a pagan practice. Sacrifice his son or daughter on fire. This practice is approved by God. God likes this, like and approve this practice? For sure not. God does not approve this practice. So God does not approve this practice, but love the person. And that's the problem. Forgive and forget. Let me see the lesson here for you, please. Forgive and forget talks about forgiveness does not mean that there will be no consequences. Obviously, forgiveness does not mean letting an abuser continue abusive patterns, right? So, in complete this lesson, there are important paragraph that I like to read to you. It is almost impossible to begin again in a family when we have each become experts at learning how best to hurt each other. Again, it's almost impossible to begin again in a family when we have each become experts at learning how best to hurt each other. It is so difficult. But that's not how Joseph reacts. It seems that he wants to put the past behind him and to move ahead with love and acceptance. Had Joseph had a different attitude, this story would have had a different ending, one not so happy. Well, this is so important to read about forgive and forget is a challenge because God can forget and sometimes we cannot that. It's so difficult, but there are the challenge for us, right? So let's go on Wednesday lesson. Arthur, are you ready? Igor, do you want to talk about?
Before that, I just want to add a comment because this I think this is the central part of the lesson of this week. This dilemma, this challenge, because we are as Christians, we are used to hear that God sends our sins into the ocean and our sins are there. But when we, in terms of human relationships, it's hard to see that happen. It's hard to see that happening in a home that is when there is a dysfunction family with abuse. As I said before, as you mentioned, that the lesson brings this example for us. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting an abuser continue abusive patterns. And so we have to balance this situation. Of course, we have to forgive. Of course, we have to apply the forgiveness. But maybe there is somebody that's watching us thinking, well, there is a hard situation here in my home, and I don't want to live that anymore. And do I have to forgive? Do I have to stay here? Do I have to endorse this kind of behavior? Do I have to tolerate everything? I think
anytime.
I think that's the lesson it's bringing us this week is for your own good you have to forgive, but for your own good you are able, you are permitted, you are able to choose not to live in that situation anymore. You have the power of choosing to stay away the people that hurt you. Okay, you can forgive, you can not can abandon the cherished anger that you may be feeling, that the bitterness. I like that word, the bitterness that what you are cultivating. You should abandon that feeling, but as well, for your own well-being, for your own safety, for your own health, you can uh, decide to, I'm okay, I forgive you, but you go this way, I'm gonna go an opposite way. So you're not in the sake of forgiveness. You are not, you don't need to be in a prisoner in an abusive relationship. And the Bible does not support that kind of relationship abuse, with abuse of power, as I said before, with mental abuse, with physical abuse. It's an important message when you see, like Joseph saw, that people, we must love another as we love ourselves. So this kind of love involved, we can we can balance these two situations, and forgiving and forgetting, in a way that can be healthy for you. That can be, we can the title of this lesson talks about healing. We can find healing with this kind of choice in our lives.
Right. Thank you very much, Igor. O Igor estava comentando aí que ele está trabalhando essa ideia de escolha, a ideia da dificuldade de você conviver com isso, tolerando. Até que ponto a gente consegue fazer isso? Muito obrigado, viu, Igor? Muito bem, vamos continuar. Let's go on. On Wednesday lesson, tornando prático. Arthur, are you ready to talk about the Wednesday lesson?
Yes, I am.
So, making it practical. Go on.
Making it practical. Well, pride, selfishness, resentment, anger, sadness, many other feelings, emotions, trauma even, may stop us from wanting or even being able to forgive. It's not easy to forgive someone that hurts us deeply. We could even say, and rightly so, I'll go deeper in that idea, that it's not fair to forgive some things or some people. But there is one key thought, one key thing that changes the game completely, is understanding that none of us deserves to be forgiven. But still, God asks us to do so. And forgiven doesn't necessarily mean the offender will have it easy, or the consequences will be gone, or I have to tolerate any kind of abusive relationship, as Igor was talking about. But it does necessarily mean, it really does, that we can live better. Yes, go on.
Arthur, there are interesting question from Renan that's is related to Wednesday lesson. In this relationship with his in his relationship with his family, what choices, this very important phrase, word choices, could Joseph make? What would that change in their story? Is more or less about the Wednesday lesson or not?
Yeah, it definitely is. As I was saying, I don't believe that Joseph thought about his brothers and thought, um, man, I just love my brothers so much. You know, those 11 guys that sold me to those foreigners and to this different country. And then I went to prison. Oh man, it was such a nice adventure. I just love my family so much. I can really forgive them. I really don't think that's how it went. I really think that Joseph uh, didn't believe that his brothers deserved to be forgiven. But I really do believe that he chose to forgive them anyway. So the choice, Joseph could have chosen to not forgive, to never look to never want to look to their faces again. And at that day when they showed up to buy food, he could, I don't know, he could have killed them, tortured them, or anything, but he did not. I think Joseph understood that none of us really deserves to be forgiven. We're sinners. We constantly make mistakes and act following our self interests, even when we don't realize it. We're not worthy of neither the forgiveness of others nor God's forgiveness. Uh, but God
But
forgives us
sorry,
anyways.
I would like to
Yeah,
add
yeah,
something. Joseph really forgave his brothers, but he didn't invite his brothers to live with him in his house. He chose that, or he didn't let them choose where they wanted to live. He chose that place in that valley, and the lessons talks about that. So he
hmm
could watch and see if they really had changed it. You know, he
hmm
was careful to not get into this abuse, to not get into a bad relationship anymore.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think he was pretty smart. He was able to forgive, but he was careful to not let his brothers
hmm
hurt him again.
yeah, that's true. Uh, yeah, that's really interesting. He forgave them. He freed himself from this weight of resentment, of sadness, of anything. But that didn't mean, as you said, he wouldn't be smart or he would just trust everyone, um, regardless of anything. No, he stood firm on God, on His grace, on His forgiveness, and on His wisdom too. But moving on, I think when we realize that we ourselves don't deserve to be forgiven, but God anyways decided to pay the price for us, and even for the ones that would have never accept Him, His forgiveness, His grace, uh, He still did it anyways. It's not fair. It really is not fair to forgive. It really is not fair for us to be forgiven, but still we are completely forgiven thanks to God's grace. And on Luke 6, verse 28, Jesus asks something of us. He says, "Bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you." And he gives us an excellent, a perfect example of that when he's being crucified. He says, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing." Jesus decides to forgive us even before we ask for it. Even before we learn, we need to be forgiven. Uh, we don't have to wait for an apology to come to us. We don't have to wait to for us to feel more comfortable with the situation we were put in or with the consequences that were brought to us. I don't have to wait for my trauma to get a little bit easier to deal with so I can forgive. I can forgive now. I can choose to do it now. Jesus forgave those people while he was still hanging on the cross. And that is just so powerful to me. That's such a strong thing because it really is a challenge. It really is hard. Jesus asked us to forgive, to love, and pray for our enemies. And he could do that. He actually could do that. And the
Yes.
idea that he was there dying a horrible death, hanging publicly, ashamed, he in that moment he wasn't like, okay, I will forgive them later when I come back. No, he was already forgiving everyone. And that's the biggest lesson of Wednesday's lesson.
Thank you. Thank
It's
you very much.
yeah, we can choose when we'll do it, as Joseph did. Well, he didn't choose to love his brothers blindly, as Emily also said, and unconditionally. in the sense of I will forget everything that happened and pretend it didn't happen. He forgave them completely and unconditionally, but he was still there to check on them. Let's see if they really changed. But he forgave them. And so did Jesus later on. He was still hanging on the cross and forgave those who were hurting, killing him. And that's
All
it.
right. All right. No, thank you very much. So many points of reflection. And I'd like to share. Dona Eva, ela falou aqui em português: a cruz é o melhor exemplo, the best example of how much cost to God Himself to forgive us. Only God knows about that because God through by this way, and this is a problem, challenge to learn to forgive. Então, se Deus passou por isso, é porque a gente consegue fazer isso. Muito interessante. A Mirelle também fez um comentário aqui, ó. Joseph was the person of this proverb. Therefore, be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. Wow, very nice. In Matthew chapter 10. Então tá aqui, para quem não sabe, né? O próprio Cristo falando, olha, sejam prudentes como as serpentes, né? E inocentes como as pombas, os pombinhos. Obrigado, Mirelle. E o Renan também falou aqui, in English, how does Joseph's story present the great controversy? Wow, very interesting. I'd like to share one slide, one keynote from the Thursday lesson, and probably may answer this question. Is the choice of forgiveness able to reveal your position in this conflict? For sure, because forgiveness hides the love of God. Forgive is not natural for us human beings, right? And to ending our lesson, I'd like to share one keynote, one slide to you that talks about the Thursday lesson. And this is the here, right. There are 3 points on Thursday lesson that I like to highlight to you now to end our lesson. The first point, Genesis 50:17. His brothers felt the weight of guilt. So the translation is below. Probably is a great problem. Probably this is a great problem to the brothers of Joseph, right? Because the love of God, his belief in God, is not the same level, the same standard of his brother Joseph. The second point, Genesis 50:18. His brothers feared for Joseph's revenge. So the translate is below. Again, the problem is that the brothers of Joseph don't felt the love of God and don't felt the rest after the forgive. And the third point, Genesis 50:15. Your brothers didn't believe in forgiveness. So the translate, os irmãos de José não acreditavam ou não acreditaram em perdão. So it's time to go. It's so nice to share these thoughts and our reflections to you. And I like to thanks Mirelle, David Silva. David Silva, you are welcome. Thank you very much for coming. And David talks about the forgive of God. God can forgive all our sins, but we must repent. Wow, this is very important because in the heaven we can arrive only by this standard, our regret, right? So to complete our lesson, I'd like to talk in Portuguese. Portuguese now. Gente, muito obrigado por vocês estarem conosco. Terça-feira nós temos a nossa lição em espanhol. Quinta-feira em português e sexta-feira em inglês. Está na hora de irmos embora. Eu quero agradecer o Arthur, a Emily e o Igor. Muito obrigado. Essa equipe é maravilhosa. Eu estou aqui no inglês e português, minha cabeça está misturando tudo. Pega aí a sua lição, tá preparado aí que eu vou fazer a pergunta, hein? Vou fazer a pergunta em português, hein? Ou inglês, hein? Tá bom? E a gente vai terminar com a perguntinha. Vamos lá, pessoal. Terminando, hein? Eu estudo a lição. I study the lesson.
Do you?
Do you?